Hello and welcome to GearConnect. We wanted to give a quick introduction on how to get started quickly, how to add gear to your projects, how to edit them, and how to use the library editor. So let's get started. This is the project page, and this is where you will start whenever you log in or come back to the software. You can see we can quickly create one. And this is what GearConnect looks like when you first load in. So at the onset, you'll see that there's not a whole lot here because it's an empty drawing. Everything starts with the library, which is over here. Here you can search for all sorts of different gear. At the moment, we have about 500 different library items. We're continually adding more information and more gear into this, but let us know what you want, and we'll definitely add more into this. And as you can see, you also have your own user library as well, which we'll get to in a bit. But to start, let's say I want to add a switch. I'll come down and I'll just take a Gear Core 12, drag that into where I want it. And then here I can give it a custom label if I want and give it some additional notes. Because it knows it's a switch, I can add an IP address and a subnet. And then I can also choose what type of mode it's inserting into. So detail mode will put the ports on the left and right of the switch with labels. And non-detail mode will simply put it on the top and bottom with no labels. So detail mode is great if you want anything complex like a switch, a console, things like that. Where non-detail mode is for simpler things such as lighting fixtures or speakers that may only have one or two inputs and outputs. So we are just going to do detail mode. We'll leave it at default, which means that the ports will be on the left and right automatically, depending on how many ports it has. The 12 only has one collection of ports, so it's all going to be on one side anyway. And then you could reverse it if you wanted. If you want everything on the left to be on the right, you could do that as well. If you wanted to get even more information, you can also click on the reference button here, and it'll take you actually to the website, so you can view more information about the product. So you can say OK, and then you can see it inserts it into the drawing automatically. So it's already figured out all the library, based on all the library data, it's already figured out all the ports, what they are, and when you hover over them, you can see in the top right all the information. So it knows it's an EtherCon, it knows that the physical direction of the port is bidirectional because you can't plug an EtherCon in backwards. In this case, it doesn't have a signal type. Signal types are for things like DMX or for SDI, things like that. It's just network, so anything will in theory go down it. And then same with signal flow, it's bidirectional, and the speed on these are 1 GB per second. So depending on what you've inserted and what you have in the drawing, it'll know all this information, and it uses all this to determine if it can connect to other pieces of gear. So let's take another switch. We'll take the 16XT, just drag it over here. Again, we'll just say OK, and then we can line it up. So here you can see we have a bunch of SFPs and we have a bunch of EtherCons. So if we take an EtherCon, drag it over, you can see it automatically validated and says, yes, you can connect that. If I take an SFP and try and do the same thing, it'll reject it because you physically can't do that. It'll also know if you take, say, a 26i, line that up as well. It also knows here, for example, that an RJ45 can connect to an EtherCon, so it will allow that, just for example. But now you can see these SFPs will actually connect and talk to each other just fine. And you can see what it's actually doing is it's automatically figuring out the best path to get to the gear. So you won't have lines, for the most part, going through gear itself, like you may have with traditional drawing applications where you have to draw every corner and bend, but I can come in and I can customize it if I want that way. And you can see it's actually avoiding that. So as I move this around, you can see that the gear is actually trying to figure out the best path, and we'll figure that out and then move around that gear. So these points here, you can just remove if you don't want that, and you can see it will automatically figure out where they go. If you don't want that feature though, if you want a more traditional drawing experience, you can just disable smart routing. And as you can see, this is normally what you would expect with generic drawing applications, things like that, where it's just going to draw a line straight to it. It doesn't care. You can put things through, and then you can take this and customize it however you want, or remove these points. But obviously, it is an advantage to quickly have the ports and lines automatically draw for you and things like that. you can then go in and you can insert and edit additional information. So for example, on the right, you can see the device configuration and all the different ports that each device is connected to. So if we go into view more details, you can get even more information. So you can view the labels, you can rename them, of course, and it'll update in the drawing. Because this is a switch, you could set a VLAN. We don't have any additional VLANs at the moment, but you could set some there. And then you could also, of course, see what port is, where it's connected to. But you can also see you can toggle ports on and off. So if you know on this switch that you don't need any of these other ones, you can just, for example, turn one of them off, or you can turn them all off, and it'll leave the ones that have connections automatically. So now we have a much easier to work with switch. This is particularly useful for things like audio consoles that have hundreds of ports that you may not need to see all the ports that it has. But we're going to just leave them all on for now. So with this, you can also go in and actually edit all of these, this information itself. So for example, if you want to go in and you want full control, so full edit mode, I can go in and actually change all of this. So some gear already has some signals or port types and different options that you can actually configure on the device itself. That will be reflected and it'll allow you to edit that directly in this as well. So you may have, for example, a signal type that can go between multiple different signals, let's say, and you can switch that directly inside here. But with full edit mode, you can go in and you have full control over all of this. So if I want to come in and I want to say this is actually multicast, for example, it's now created a new group and it knows that this is a multicast sending network. In addition, if I want to say this is actually RJ45, I can do that as well. And now it's an RJ45 multicast. And so you can see it will automatically update here. And just like before, it'll know that it can connect, no problem. And as you can see, it will automatically relabel things for you. So let's say I have a port. And then if I go in and I try and change it to say EtherCon, it'll actually warn me that I have something connected. So it'll just say, do you want to remove it? I say yes. And you can see it's automatically relabeled it for us so that we can easily identify it back on the drawing that it's an EtherCon. And because this is a different port group, you can see that these are all grouped together, that it's actually separated this out for us so that if you change this, let's say, instead of an EtherCon to something crazy like an NL8, let's say, you can see the color is actually changed to reflect that as well. So typically, colors represent things that you can connect itself to other devices, but that's not necessarily the case. For example, 2DMX cables, you may have a physical connection in and out. You won't be able to connect a male to a male, for example, so it'll reject that, but they will both be the same color. So it's very easy to see what you might possibly be able to connect to. And then once you try and do the connection, it will reject it. And likewise, a generic port will allow you to connect to anything. So this guy can connect to this RJ45, but it can also connect to this SFP. And it basically turns off validation so that you're allowed to connect to whatever you want, regardless of what it is. If you don't want this validation, if you don't want anything, any of those features. And there are a collection of generic ports that you can add in. So if you do just want anything such as generic 16 port, this will just insert with 16 generic items that you can then connect to whatever you want. Pretty easy. But then there's also some generic, say, lighting consoles that will have some common elements like XLR outs, RJ45s. And you can see, for example, the colors here have changed. So the RJ45 can connect no problem, but this guy will be able to connect to a generic, but it will not be able to connect to an EtherCon. But as you can see, this out will be able to connect to this in, but this out will not be able to connect to another out because that physically is not possible. So we'll clean up this a little bit. We can just right click and say remove. It'll clean up all the extra ports around it and the extra lines. Remove all this as well, and we'll remove this. So as you can see, everything that we've been doing so far has been adding into my gear. So this is a collection of all the items that you've inserted and what is currently used and not used. So just like in the library, we can drag one of these back in. And what you'll actually see if I relabel one of these, it updates here. And if I remove it, it'll remember that for next time. Same with IP addresses and any other equipment that you add. What it does do is resets your ports. So for example, if I go in and I say change this to an RJ45 and I remove, once I add it back in, you can see it's reset back to the ethercons. This is because all the gear is using the library items as templates to then create this equipment for you. So it's a really easy way to reset back to a factory default state. But you can also see which ones have been used and not used. And if there's some in here that you know that you're not going to use anymore, you can just go in and delete it. You can sort by category or by manufacturer, just as the library. When you select something in here, it'll select it here as well. Likewise, if I have multiple in here, you can see it selects the different one in the drawing as well. So a pretty easy way to quickly find different devices. And let's add in, say, a VX4. You can see here we actually have expansion cards. So some devices have swappable either VFC cards in the case of Disguise, or some projectors have swappable components and things like that. You can actually go in and customize this. So let's say by default, this VX4 ships with 4 HDMI port or VFCs. So let's remove some of these, and let's say I've actually swapped out and put some quad SDIs in there. It knows how many you can fit in, and it will tell you when you've reached your limit. So we'll say OK, and insert that. And you can see it's now inserted those HDMIs and these SDIs for us. Let's connect that up to a projector. And you can see here all the various different colors and all the different connections. So for example, you can do network just like before, and we can do HDMI. We can do SDI as well. And you can see that the lines are automatically identified with either circles to indicate bidirection, or it'll automatically arrow the signal flow for you. So you can see here, this is an out going into an in. So let's add our front of house switch back in. Connect these up. And then that doesn't make sense, so we will connect it that way. So now we can go over to reports, and reports is a way to view all of your data quickly in a spreadsheet. So just like you're used to with a typical spreadsheet application, you can use keyboard shortcuts to navigate around. You can quickly edit labels and things like that here, and it will automatically update in the drawing as well. And just like a regular spreadsheet application, you can filter this. So if we say only want to see items from Disguise, we can easily do that. There are 3 basic types of reports. There's gear, ports, and connections. By default, these are all built in, and then it's just an easy way to quickly go in and edit whenever you need to. But you can see there's also lots of additional fields that you can toggle on and off. So you could toggle the fiber type, you can toggle the speed, or you could hide additional things if you don't care. If you want to save this as a custom report, you can just do save report as. And now I have a custom report that I can then go back to at any point. You can also rename and delete them as well. If you want to search for specific ones, that's supported as well. And the final type is connections. So you can see what's connected to what gear, and even drill down to which port is connected as well. If you want a bulk update, this of course supports copy and paste, so I can take this and update several all at the same time. And again, these are all updated directly back in the drawing as well. Same with if I want to toggle certain ones on and off. Same idea, they'll be disabled in the drawing as well. And then finally, let's take a look at the library editor. So in the library editor, you can view any of the devices that we've been looking at so far. You get a preview of what they would look like in detail mode and what they look like in standard mode, and then all their configurations. You can see for a more complex item, you get more information, and you can expand this if you want, if it takes a lot of space in the window. From here, I could take any of these devices and copy them to my own library. Now these are project agnostic, so you can use these across all of your projects. You don't have to be limited just to an individual project with these. So from here, you can then customize them completely. You can see it defaulted the manufacturer for me, but I can make my own manufacturer. Give it a description and location if I want, and then add a brand. All library items have a brand and a manufacturer, just to easily categorize them in the table or in the list. You can give it a URL if you want, which will actually be used to launch the file. In this case, we're just making something up, so we'll remove that. And now you can go in and customize exactly all of your reports. So let's say we'll remove these. The live preview will update 2 seconds after you're done making edits. But let's say we add another. Let's say we want it to be an XLR 3-pin. It's an output. And we want 4 of them. It'll automatically update in the preview, and we can see what exactly that'll look like. If we want to give it a custom label, you can see it will default to one based on the port type and the directions, but we can say mic out, for example, and this hypothetical made up switch. We can then save it. And then when we go back to our project, we now have this switch that we can insert and use as we see fit. All the gear is versioned, so if you make a change in your library editor, let's say we go in and we delete these and we resave, the existing project still has the old library item in it. But if we insert the new one, you can see it has the latest changes. If I remove this one and add it back, it'll continue to maintain the previous ports because that's the version that it's been set to. You can then very easily just delete that from your project and carry on with using the new one. This is just a few of the core things that gearconnect can do, and we can't wait for more people to give it a shot. So let us know what you think, play around with it. There's lots of extra features that we haven't gone over today, but hopefully you get a taste for what gearconnect looks like and what it is, and we can't wait to see what you do with it. Thank you very much.